Spirit in him, and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land where he went. And his descendants shall inherit it. Now the Amalekites, the Canaanites, dwell in the valley. Tomorrow, turn and move out into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. Verse 26. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, how shall I bear with this evil congregation who complain against me? I have heard the complaints which the children of Israel make against me. Say to them, as I live, says the Lord, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will do to you. The carcasses of you who has complained against me shall fall in this wilderness. All of you who were numbered according to your entire number from 20 years old and above, except for Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun, none, you shall by no means enter to the land which I swore I would make you dwell in. But your little ones, whom you said would be victims, I will bring in. And they shall know the land which you have despised. But as for you, your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and your sons shall be shepherded in the wilderness 40 years, and bear the brunt of your infidelity, until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness. According to the numbers of the days in which you have spied out the land, 40 days, for each day you shall bear your guilt 1 year, namely 40 years, and you shall know my rejection. I, the Lord, have spoken this. I will surely do so to all this evil congregation who are gathered together against me. In this wilderness they shall be consumed, and there they shall die. I'm not sure if you're like me in the sense that I find benefit in attending a wake service. Because whenever I go to a wake service, I would see a dead person, right? Especially if I really know the person, I find benefit. And I keep on telling myself, Bobby, one day your turn will come. It's just a matter of time. And it's one thing to attend a wake service of a friend of yours, or a friend of a friend or acquaintance. It's another thing to attend a wake service of somebody that is dear to you, that is close to you. When God spoke this against the Israelites, Moses saw in the next 38 years God fulfilling all these promises. All these things God was fulfilling. And in Numbers chapter 20, Miriam and Aaron, the brothers and sister of Moses, also died. And it was at that time, at the lowest point of his life, Moses struck the rock. He was seeing God. He was seeing people dying left and right. His very eyes saw it. Try to imagine annihilating the whole tribe. Everybody 20 years and above will die. Every day there was a wake service. Every day there were people crying. And Moses saw this. And I can imagine how that was affecting him. Until one day it knocked at the door and his very brother and sister also died. He was experiencing the very curse that God has said that He will give upon the Israelites. 40 years of death. The wages of sin was being played out every single day. Day after day, week after week, month after month, their carcasses were laid in the desert as God sovereignly appointed it to be. And it is in this low point in the life of Moses. Moses starts reflecting on his life. Go to Psalm 90, please. We're looking both at Psalm 90 and Luke 12 today. As Moses was seeing the life of people being vanquished, he reflects on the meaning of life, on the reality of life, a reality that we cannot escape. Verse 1, Psalm 90 verse 1 says, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. The word there is Adonai. The God of Israel who has the authority of all things. Moses was addressing God here as Adonai. The God of my forefathers, the God of Israel who has the authority of all things. And he says, you have been our dwelling place. It's funny, he says, you have been our dwelling place, but in reality, they had no dwelling place. Abraham had no dwelling place. Isaac and Jacob was sojourner. Moses, at this very moment, was in the wilderness. They were moving from here and there. Yet he calls God as, you are our dwelling place, our Mo'an. And what that means is not just a dwelling place where they stay. It means you are our shelter from danger. What a word to speak when death is knocking at your door and you cry out to Adonai saying, Lord, you have sheltered me. You have sheltered us from danger. You are our dwelling place in all generations. They had no fixed home. They anchored. Moses is anchoring. A home is a sense of security, right? There's always a place to come back, a home. That's why ancestral home. Yet here we see that the security of the Jewish people lies in God. That is where their anchor is held. And there, as Moses reflects on life, he reflects on who God is. In the midst of all this death, he acknowledges, Lord, you are sovereign. You have full authority of all things. You are our Mo'an. Verse 2 says, before the mountains were brought forth, or even you have formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. For a Hebrew who hears this, the most enduring thing for a Hebrew is, guess what? A mountain. To them, when you connote a mountain, to them, that is the concept of permanence, everlasting, unchanging. In San Pablo, where I live, where I grew up, there's a mountain in front of our house. Honestly, the shape has not changed since the day I was born. It's unchanging. Nagpalit na ng gobyerno, nagpalit na panahon ng Kastila, ganun na yun eh. Right? Panahon ng Kastila, panahon ng Amerikano, panahon ng Hapon. It is unchanging. And there, and to a Jew, when you say mountain, it's everlasting. I never saw a mountain disappear. Personally, or in a video. Oh, baka sa video meron, no? I don't know. But for a Jew, when they say mountain, it's there. It's permanent. Ninuno natin. Alam yan. And it will always be there. And there, Moses is trying to show who God is. He is eternal. He is permanent. He is everlasting. He is unchanging. He is enduring. And he says, what? Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you have formed the earth and the world, from everlasting past to everlasting future, you are God. He meditates on that. You are El. The word God there is El, meaning the God who created and rules the universe, that commands worship. That is how Moses is portraying who God is. And he's saying this, that God is permanent, He's unchanging, He's everlasting. And if there's anything in this world that we can liken Him to, that character, it's the mountain. That is our God. And He's saying that to make a big contrast. He wants to make a big contrast between who God is and who we are as human beings. Verse 3 is the contrast. He says, you turn man to destruction and say, return, O children of men. You know, here it tells us about man, that what? Man will die, including me and you. And that is an account of sin. And as I mentioned in the past, before man sinned, I didn't have the time anymore to check out the Hebrew word. But Hebrew word, before man sinned in Genesis chapter 3, is a different Hebrew word after he sinned. Eventually, the meaning of the word of man after he sinned means being sick unto death. So, here, after establishing how permanent God is, He says, us man, we will return to dust, as promised by God when man sinned. Verse 4 says, for 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it comes to pass, and like a watch in the night. As Moses sees what was going on in his generation, he meditates on this. No matter how incredibly long you live, I mean, who's the longest person in modern history that lived? Maybe, how many years? 100, 120, di ba? Mga 110. And here, di ba? For 1,000 years in your sight, and maybe Moses was thinking about yung mga ninuno niya matatagal ang buhay. Right? who are these great people in the Old Testament who live 800 years, 900 years? I think the most